This is a costume for Christmas to surprise the kids. So you won't see this video anyway till after they have seen it. I will probably have more fun reveal crazy pictures of either excited or terrified kids. It's going to be one extreme or the other. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while for a Kbatz craft. We had a bit of our Halloween crazy and some of the things that actually didn't even get videoed. I had a lot of pictures on Instagram or on my blog, small write-up things. But this has been now the Christmas push, which, yes, actually did start before Halloween. Yes, I know, I was one of those people that was working on Christmas things before Halloween. But, you know, craft store-wise, you didn't mind that when you began to see holiday things a couple months in advance. Because, you know, crafters need windows and need time. But I calculated the length of time that it would take to do this costume for Christmas. And it was a lot and it took a while. And, you know, we also had some crazy things happening here. Difficulty actually around Thanksgiving. And this costume was actually kind of something that really helped me along as I was doing it. You know, it was literally one stitch at a time, you know, while you kind of watch and wait through difficult times. So that kind of, it helps give me a focus to kind of have something important to do with the deadline, that, you know, that things must still go on, tasks still have to happen. So this project kind of became even more emotional and important. Now, I've been filming video for this off and on. There's some things that have really detailed video, I think, and other things that are just completely skipped over because obviously I was not feeling in video fashion for certain times, difficult things. And I didn't intend to do this all by hand, but I believe most of it actually ended up being by hand, just because then I did get into some finite things. And I used some of that invisible thread that was in a grab bag from a thrift haul that was just, like, on one hand, the best thing ever. I was like, oh my God, I can top stitch everything and you won't see it and it'll be glorious and wonderful. And then there were other times where it was like, oh my God, this is such a pain in the ass. This is so frustrating. Like, wait, it's hung up somewhere and I can't see where my invisible thread is hung up on something, and I have to like completely stop and touch and shine spotlights to find this thread. So there were some parts of this project that flew by very easily, and other parts that were just kind of tedious and sorrowful, and just do the thing, again, one stitch at a time. I have been calling this my mother Christmas costume. I have thought about this for a while, actually before the pandemic, when I was in a small reading of A Christmas Carol, and I had done a video where I had done a cape and a muff and a bonnet, and I was discussing about how I just wore a flop kind of long tiered dress and a blazer and a top hat, and everybody thought I looked really Dickensian, even though I knew that that was kind of really completely inaccurate. But everybody was surprised, why did I look so old-fashioned, or why did I dress up? And I kind of thought, well, if you think this is dressed up and it's basically my regular attire, wait. I didn't want to be Mrs. Claus. I knew I wanted it to be green like the Ghost of Christmas Present. But I didn't want to be full-on Ghost of Christmas Present either. I live out in the forest. I wanted something that was more maybe solstice kind of, or Father Christmas-like. And I knew I wanted some candle works, like some Santa Lucia, but I wasn't going to do it in white. So this kind of became, I don't know, somewhere along the line, Mother Christmas, in combination of, I don't know, Father Christmas and Mother Nature. I reused the staff actually from my Halloween mystery costume. I really like the idea of that kind of being like an orange kind of natural wooden kind of staff, kind of firelight. And that muff that I made to match that cape was actually really kind of flat and pathetic. I actually reused that as the interior with some white fur to make some of the accessories. So it wasn't just a case of the costume, then it became all the accessories that really added on to this. And I did give myself a little hesitancy because along the way, I started out with just a really nice green velvet dress. And then as the fur and the gold and the beads and the buttons and all these crazy holiday holly and everything began everywhere, I thought, this is getting a little over the top. Is it too much? But then I thought, but you know, you have to go for it. You have to go you have to go with it. So some of the design did change a little bit along the way. This is 2 separate pieces. Now I can't imagine it being one whole piece. That would have been really crazy. But the skirts that I had been making from a skirt pattern last year, when I had made the red Christmas skirt, I just kept going with every piece of fabric that I thought could be a skirt and made a bunch more skirts, which I have video footage for. But you know, that sewing the red skirt video is actually the least popular video on my channel, which says a lot when my channels don't get very many views anyway. I think there were literally 5 views on that video. So I kind of thought, well, geez, well, I won't make sewing videos anymore if nobody's watching them. I'll just do it for myself, you know, post the pictures, maybe do a write-up on my blog about some portion or something. But I thought, I guess nobody wants to see sewing videos, but this just became such a massive thing, and I have video footage for it. But the skirt came together very quickly. And I believe I posted on Instagram about, there is like a nice split front where it does sort of have that Ghost of Christmas Present kind of green kind of cloak. But there is an opening that there is a dress underneath. And with all those buttons in that giant button jar that I found at the thrift store, I did find some green buttons where I thought that I could at least attach the bodice to the skirt, but I ended up not doing that either, that they remain 2 separate pieces. My artwork, you will forgive me, is not the best. The skirt I will probably actually do first because that's the biggest thing. The bodice here, I was going to again do the red rushed satin in the front center panel and white trim, of course, everywhere. Now, it's meant to be, in theory, if this is sort of a green velvet cloak that is an overcloak that comes over a red dress underneath, but obviously it is going to be one dress. But so there will be a white fur trim and then the waist cincher. Do you love my pathetic pathetic little artwork there? This one was just some kind of triangle, maybe a table topper to kind of match. And I've started seam ripping this one, and I'm gaining, I don't know, 1.5 inches or so, which may not seem like a big deal, but it could eventually. This other piece that's kind of a round has, it's difficult for me to show you on camera, has a much tighter finished seam that would probably be a lot more difficult than it's worth to unpick just to get 1 inch, and where it would probably be damaging the material. So I'm not going to unpick that part. I will unpick this one, which is actually, it comes undone quite easy. So I can do this. The big thing, of course, is unpicking the giant curtains. These are lined tab top curtains. So I'll remove these tabs and I'll remove the lining. But here is where seam picking, undoing all the threads, can be very important. If you're using thrifted fabric and you have limited dead stock to spare, it may only seem like I'm gaining, well, that still seems quite a bit if I'm gaining 2 inches by undoing this side, but look at the border here on the end of this, where I am gaining a lot worth. That's a lot of excess fabric that I will be using. The width of the curtain as opposed to the length is actually right what I would need for my height for skirt length, which is perfect. But now that I've laid out the big round, I'm not sure if that's meant to be the matching tablecloth or if it's meant to be, you kind of would fold it over in half like a valance kind of swag. I don't know. I know that the one curtain widthwise fits my skirt pattern pieces, so I'm not necessarily concerned about that. But I am feeling a little more comfortable in that I do already have an abundance, I think, of fabric. It might actually be easy with this circumference here to maybe really get some dramatic sleeves just out of this piece of giant fabric, because I still have another full-length curtain and the square. It's really exciting. I was in fear that I was going to have to be scrimping and pinching and trying to find a matching fabric, but fortunately it looks like it's going to be okay. This is my center that I have on a fold right now, because I've changed my mind as projects come along. I don't want there to be as much of a front red center panel. I do want it to be almost entirely closed with the green and just have a split front in the middle with that red underneath. So it's more of a hidden kind of surprise, a peek, a hint of red, but the majority be green. So my center front panel is going to be split open. So this is 1/2 of my panel. And I'm going to cut this all out as one piece, the side and the back panel. And then up there, way up, far away there, is my second back side panel and back skirt panel. And I'm going to bring my center half over there. So I'm going to have 2 whole pieces of skirt. I realized this when I did my petticoat. If I have all these pieces laid out, there's no sense in actually cutting out the individual pieces and stitching them back together again. I only want one small piece of this, just my centerpiece panel. This is the shape I need of the satin underneath. So, actually it goes in this direction. There we go. And it's going to be this satin liner, this straight piece, and then the 2 half pieces of that center green panel. So I love the way this sounds. If you can hear compared to all the other noises in the basement. So it just gives, I don't know, this hint of rustling through the woods, and with the split green and all that white fur, and then you get a little hint of the red. It's going to be really magical. Hi. You don't usually come down here. The entire top will be attached together, and I need to fold that under to get my drawstring casing. So while this will be open, it will be closed at the top. And the bodice, I had a little bit of difficulty in the pattern drafting, because upsizing the pattern was easy, but I don't know, somewhere along the line maybe over drafted the pattern, where there was an extra 2 inches at the bottom that I did not need, because I was adding these kind of flaps across the front, which I just used snaps. I just thought snaps was easier than hooks and eyes. I don't know why. So because I had this kind of over flapping in the front of the bodice, I had to adjust that a little bit, where I realized I didn't need some of the length that the pattern was calling for. But then when I had my kind of flap kind of pieces, because again, I was thinking of like a cloak that was kind of partially opened, then I kind of had to figure where that fur trim came from. And every time I made the cut, I didn't make mistakes during this process. There were things that changed along the way. But then there were things that I did have doubts about, though. For as much as every time I was really excited, wow, this is coming together so fast, this is working so great, I did have a little bit of a question when I got to the fur trim, because I liked the green dress and bodice the way it was. And then I thought, is that trim too much? And I did have ribbon that was meant to be a holiday fur ribbon, and the stuff kind of sheds like crazy. And that's what I used to make the muff. But that fur with the gold trim came off of 2 costume capes that I had shown in a thrift haul that I had gotten from Goodwill, that they were actually tossed in with the linens kind of section. And I saved that red velvet. I'm actually probably going to make a red velvet skirt out of the rest of those, but I feel like you could tell it would have been expensive if I had bought that green velvet, you know, by the bolt. But the thrift curtains were still of really good quality. And there were a few times where I had to make sure the way the pile was going. So there's the back piece of the skirt, because it has the opening in the front. There's one whole back piece that came from the second curtain, where I thought if there is a slight kind of color change, you won't notice it as much when that's all gathered in the back. But you could tell that that was still a quality kind of fabric. So when that fur came on, that was actually kind of costume, kind of cheap. I thought, oh no, did I just totally cheapen what I've done? Because I'm using, you know, taking, you know, a cheap thing from one cheap thing and trying to put it onto something to make it embellished, kind of classy. But once I got all of that fur actually kind of tacked down and adjusted with that invisible thread, it really started to look really great. Where if there were any parts of that gold ribbon, again, which if I was getting that kind of Celtic skull kind of gold ribbon, it would have been something probably really expensive. But places where that kind of was coming undone, I was able to kind of stitch back down with that invisible stitch, and I was able to adjust that fur to be either centered or off-centered, how it needed to be for that kind of opening. My poor little girl right here looks, she's dressed so shabby. She's wearing a curtain petticoat and a paper shirt. I don't mind that this is a little baggy, but this is a really great place to start. I'm actually really pleased with this. This, again, has a lot of information. If you don't necessarily understand what's happening with a pattern, or you're not sure, again, where to start, hey, trace things out. I can see what I need to do here. So I've done a pattern mock-up draft. I will make a fabric mock-up and then draft a new pattern and then get to my liner. So that's 4 steps before I even get to my finished fashion fabric, but that's okay to get it right the first time. Instead of a back closure, I just wanted to do some hooks and eyes here, hidden under my white fur trim on the bodice, because it's going to have a large neck opening because of my hood. So I'm not going to do a full-length zipper in the back. My closure is going to be hidden here in the front. I have traced my pieces, one back piece, the bodice front on the fold, and of course I did need to add a few inches to that top. So I'm not sure if I'm going to need an extra notch there or not, but better again to have those inches to maneuver. This is a very informative process, step by step, inch by inch, literally. We're getting closer to something that resembles clothing instead of just playing dress up with paper. On that extra, ironically, I don't need the extra 2 inches that I added on the bottom. But the extra 2 inches that I added on the top of here of the sweetheart line actually worked out really nice. And again, I'm going to have triangle pieces as well come across this front in the green velvet. That looks really ugly right now. But figuring out these pieces at this stage is very important. I mean, I initially set aside a couple months for this project, but because I knew I was only going to be doing parts and pieces, but getting the shapes together, and seeing everything come together is moving pretty quickly, which is nice. So I want to press these and iron these down, but this is my liner, which will be on the inside, the skin, the cotton. And I cut a red satin, more of an interfacer, just to give it something a little sturdy. And then I've got the red ruched underneath. And the idea is that these can fold down and around each other. And then all that hidden, ugly side seaming, all the seams can then just go together in the red liner, which this I probably will do in the traditional sew reverse faces together and then turn them right side out, just because I want this to have that extra layer of sturdiness, and I want that nice little princess kind of dip. Because I initially had, that was the original, ooh, that's crappy. Where the heck is my drawings? My terrible, terrible drawings. There we go. I originally had this be open much wider to show that seam, and then that seam line carried through when I scaled up this pattern. But if I've got the green overlay coming down to a point, actually more like so in my original design, terrible here, you're not going to see a princess seam. So my princess seams will be on my interior bodice layer, but not on the outside. Can you see yet this color properly under the spotlight? My staff for my Halloween costume is also going to wonderfully match the kind of Mother Nature, Father Christmas type of theme. So, ooh, stepped on a skeleton. That beadwork on the cuff, at first I thought was really magical. And the order that I did this project both helped and hindered at the same time, because I waited to put the lining on the sleeves until after I had done the beadwork. But then I needed to put my hand back inside the lining when I had the scroll ribbon going around. And that, again, that invisible thread was really awesome in that regard. And that green scroll that had just a really nice kind of glitter to it, which really kind of added a little bit of shine and shimmer. But those beads, every time I was going around with the invisible thread, when one of those like dangle beads got stuck in the thread, I had to go back through every single bead and see where the thread was. So that was something that went very quickly, but was also kind of very time consuming. I had to be very careful, very delicately. But also, again, the effect was really kind of great and really kind of fun. It went from just a big open sleeve to something shiny and magical. But just to give guideline on my sleeve, that I want to make sure I've got enough beads to really make a really dramatic cut. And for some reason, this is not actually a proper sleeve pattern. 2020 was a very scary time. If you can read my chicken scratch writing, standard arm 2020. I actually can't find right now my bodice, my sort of block upper body kind of pattern. It might actually be with the vest that I never finished to match that original red skirt that I made. I have to look for that one. But this doesn't have a proper sort of arm-side form on this pattern. But, and it's very generic here, where I've just made a really pathetic seam allowance, shoulder mark, elbow lines, but it's the shape of my arm, which is at least a place to start in making a pattern for these dramatic sleeves, because all the sleeve patterns that I have all tend to be the kinds that are tight to the elbow in a 3/4 length and then flare out, where I want this to be a much more medieval kind of cloak sleeve. So if I fold this in half, I can get at least the size that I need. And I can do the mock-ups in my red satin and adjust those to then be the liner. This already has that great finished seam on it. I just marked where this curve line was, and then I can actually forego that little corner, and I just taped another little piece, another little corner piece onto my little pattern here. So, I'm really glad that I laid this out, because I can follow this natural seam line to a really great curved point and have my beaded fringe and measured out my arm side, have room to spare in the arm, and you know what? Look, I have enough fabric that I can make another. I have tempted to make like a green poncho to go over top of my orange skirt, so then I can look like a big giant flouncy pumpkin. But now I also wonder, okay, instead of a giant pumpkin poncho top, I wonder if I can get the hood out of that as well. Wow. The hood also kind of starts at the shoulders to go up in the back. And I did it that way because I knew that I just wanted the hood resting on the kind of wreath kind of crown with the candles coming up in the front. But I guess that's not really accurate for a hood. But that was a pattern that I just kind of drafted myself to make sure that it fit the back neckline. Yes, I did try it on. I am in my basement at 1 o'clock in the morning playing dress up with paper hoods. It's not the most unusual thing, actually, believe me. I'm glad that I can get all the sleeve pieces and all the hood pieces out of this fabric round. This will use all this. This is only going to use half of this, and I will still have pieces of this to spare, which is great. My husband saw the inside out, and he was like, okay, this looks a little weird. Just some whip stitching of the sleeve liner that had been in the satin, and the satin hood liner, and my little snaps are here. I went with snaps, I don't know why, instead of hooks and eyes. I just thought the snaps were easier because I didn't want to keep fighting with hidden hooks going in the wrong directions. So it looks kind of nice on the inside, I think. I like that it looks, you know, pretty well finished. It's not super perfect on the inside. I did end up cutting this panel here, where I had made actually this pattern piece. This was the pattern piece that I had used, but I had to size it up, where I had this long panel that was just too long, and with this extra flap from my crossover front, it was just a little too much bulk. So I actually just kind of cut it on an angle of where my front pieces are going to crisscross. Waist cincher was in some ways a lot of fun. But that was what I was doing when we were having a really difficult crisis Thanksgiving. So it was very helpful to make those channels for, I just actually use zip ties because I thought this is not going to be a full-on corset that I'm going to wear every day. This is just something temporary. I thought about doing, again, ripping through that fast on the machine, but I thought I could play with the tightness, the tautness of the channels better if I did it by hand. So that was really one stitch at a time. I did the inside kind of red layer and then the leather on top. And now I think it might be a little too big. I was really pleased the way it came out so fast. I didn't have to do any major adjustments or corrections. I really enjoyed that one. I did the decorative buttons down the front because I intended it to tie in the back. And initially, I think I had it with the kind of curved part to be up higher. But then I actually ended up reversing it for the curved part to be down lower, turning it upside down. But then I realized, I told my niece I was not ready for a reveal when she wanted to get the kids together because I said, I need help getting in this costume. I backed myself into a corner by having really giant sleeves with wonderful scroll beadwork down the bottoms, down the cuffs, because that meant that I was getting all those lovely beads hung up when I was trying to tie the laces in the back. I guess there might be little things that I might adjust. Somehow, I guess I would do some kind of secret opening in the front or something. I don't know. Or I feel like that waist cincher is kind of big. Rather than maybe sucking in my problem area because I'm not worried about the tight lacing for this. I feel like maybe it kind of does it accentuate the problem area. I don't know. But because the channels are in there, I can't just kind of fold it to make it less wide. So it is what it is. I really enjoyed doing the little extra things, the gold buttons, the bells and the tassels that were kind of on the hood. The satchel, I wasn't sure if I was going to do because I wasn't sure if I was going to have enough of that matching leather. And that I did do in the yellow kind of thread because, again, this time I wanted that stitching to show, where because there was so much of the kind of crisscross gold design on the waist cincher, I went with the invisible thread there. But the satchel, again, I thought you would see that kind of stitching. And I guess in hindsight, if I'd planned it out better, I probably would have made the waist cincher smaller and the satchel to be bigger. But I only needed the satchel just enough for a handful of little presents to kind of grab for each. And I wasn't worried about if the edges were finished and everything. The strap would have been too small if I was turning everything under. So that was just a clean cut and a stitch. But then I did do kind of the front flap a little nice. And that was just a little pouch that was kind of folded together. So that was kind of an unexpected addition. As I made the costume, it was, well, what if I had this instead of that? Or if I added this and that? And then I kind of realized, well, I still had some leather pieces left. I thought about making kind of like some armband, kind of maybe glovelet kind of things. But I thought that doesn't make sense if I've got a muff. And I thought, well, if I'm holding a staff, I can't have both hands in the muff. The muff will kind of be on one sleeve, kind of halfway under. Like I could just put my hands in and out when it's cold. But then what would I do with the staff? I don't know. I had made some bells with a little leaf. Again, when I did that cape, and I just stuck that on the little side of the satchel just for another little extra bell, natural kind of motif. So everything I sewed for my nieces when they were young had bells on it, and that was more so I could hear where they were and I knew what they were doing. The jewelry was something that was completely unexpected. I didn't expect to add jewelry onto it, but then, of course, yes, I did. The jewelry was just the leftover pieces, the last of the beaded trim and the last of the floral ribbon. And there were two little beaded ones that had broken, where there was only like a couple of the little beads that I just made little earrings. And then I did the rest. I actually sewed, it seems strange to say I sewed jewelry. But I just sewed the beads onto the last of that scroll ribbon, and then I actually sewed in the clasp and made myself a little choker. Don't know that you can really see everything, I think, all at once in this costume. I feel like maybe there's just so much that maybe I thought the attention to detail was what would be good, but there's so much to see, I think, and I guess the kids probably are not going to care less. They're just going to want to see, you know, what toy is in the pouch. In hindsight, I'm really pleased overall with this costume. Yes, there were things that I maybe would do differently, redo if I had the material or wasn't in a time crunch to do. But I'm always in a time crunch to do, and I'm always kind of short on material. I do still have another piece of that green velvet, which I feel like I may probably just make a straight regular skirt. Again, another kind of holiday. I only wear green at Christmas, usually in accessories. So a bold green velvet skirt might be a lot of fun. But I like that as I was making this costume in each of these steps along the way, that there are kind of new holiday memories that are coming with this, you know, and I will probably only get maybe a couple years use out of it. I mean, my niece now is 2, so maybe at some point she won't, you know, care about, you know, Mother Christmas coming to bring her a present on Santa Lucia Day. But I'm really pleased with this. This was a real kind of, I had something pictured in my head, and I get very frustrated sometimes when what you see in your head does not usually translate to what happens, because you're compromising with fabric or compromising with materials, or sometimes you just don't know what you're doing. So it's really nice that there are parts of this that, yes, maybe there are things that I would change and adjust, but there were parts of this that really exceeded my expectations. And you know, because I was working under deadline, under crazy circumstances, it makes it just all the more special, and I get emotional. I was talking on the InSession Film podcast, just saying, you know, I get emotional at Christmas, you know, because, you know, to me it's not necessarily just Christmas. It's everyone having love and light and hearth and home, and so I didn't want this to have a specific Trinity kind of specifically Christmas, December 25th. You know, I mean, heck, I may I just had an idea, you know, I could actually still surprise my niece on Epiphany too. I could work this thing into January, you know, because it does have that bit of Mother Nature kind of motif. If I were really going all out with expense, I might have some kind of like light up or animatronic kind of deer, like the kind that you put outside in your yard, kind of with me. But that I think would be a bit much. I could make myself a giant sleigh or something. So this has both been a difficult project, but yet a very wonderful project. And I'm really excited that it was on schedule. I didn't have mistakes for the craziness that was happening, that it all came together. I think that was just simply part of sewing know-how. And there were parts where I would say, well, it's okay if this is old, or this matches because it's holiday editions, or it's meant to look ye old, so it doesn't have to be perfect type of things. But also, I mean, because I had already worked with that kind of bodice type and that kind of skirt type, that this was something that the bulk of the big sewing thing went very quickly, and it was the time consuming of all the little accessories that came along with it. But it was really nice to actually kind of finish actually a little bit ahead. I'm really excited with this. I'm excited to see like all the how the pictures and everything turn out, and all the kids' kind of reactions. I think they'll like it. I hope. This is one time where I don't want to scare any of the kids. Some of my sewing videos, I know that my channel is kind of wayward in its focus, but I enjoy making something, and then I look at something and see not what it is, but what it could be. This was thrift curtains that I said, okay, Scarlett O'Hara. Yes, I know the Scarlett O'Hara jokes. I made a dress out of green velvet curtains. I know, Carol Burnett saw it in the window and just had to have it. But, this was something that I wanted to make magical, that I had in my mind, and it was really great to see it come to fruition. And so I do, I think, oh, nobody's going to watch a video. Who cares? Nobody's going to read if you wrote something about it, or who cares about your pictures? A couple likes, big deal. But then I get excited when I'm excited, and I feel like, well, maybe this will inspire someone else to make their own holiday magic. So, thank you for watching. I will link to some of the other information and all the pictures and Instagram and things like that below, so you can look, like, subscribe, follow, whatever. And I hope you have a safe and joyous holiday season. So thank you for watching. Bye.